I'm Freddie Mange with Epicenter Avocado Nursery, and today we're going to show a top working regraft of an existing established avocado tree. The tree we're working with today is a Helen. It's a beautiful tree. It's actually a really nice avocado. In Southern California, it makes over 1 pound fruit, easy peeling, delicious, high oil content. For us in Northern California, since it's a bee type, a bee flowered variety, and bee flowers don't really work in a cooler climate, it's underperforms in a variety of ways. First of all, it rarely sets more than a dozen fruit in a year. It's a pretty big tree, takes a lot of space. And the fruit that it does set, it doesn't really carry them to, it seems like, perfection. It doesn't really finish them properly. It seems like this close, we're 3/4 of a mile from the ocean, we don't have enough heat or something to really ripen it. So it's a pretty good avocado up here, but not great. There's better things that that we can graft, and there's more interesting things. And today we're actually going to graft it to not necessarily a better avocado, but a more interesting one. It's the Avocado, and that's we'll talk about that a little bit more. This video assumes, I guess, that you're comfortable grafting, that you are facile with basic grafting skills, and if you're not, then you should see our grafting tutorial on Monterey Bay chapter of California Rare Fruit Growers MBCRFG website. We've got a really good basic grafting video. We've got an avocado seedling grafting video, and this is a top working regraft of a big tree. It's not that big a tree, but it's a pretty big tree, big enough to give you an idea of what the issues are. So I guess first of all, it's 15 feet tall. It's about 7 years old, and I'm going to take my Sawzall and chop the branches off of it. And the reason to do that is for an apple tree, I might just cut back a little bit and put a branch of something better or something different on, and it would take. But with the avocado tree, it seems like it will partition off a graft, shut it off, and send nutrients to its own genetic material where there's no resistance. When you make a graft, there's always a little bit of resistance between the rootstock and the scion until circulation is established by callousing and completely healing the graft wound. And until that happens, you've got this kind of resistance that makes it really easy for the tree to shunt its energy into other parts of the tree if they're available. If you cut the whole tree down and leave it no option but to empower your graft has a much higher chance of succeeding. Now, I've seen people do other things where they cut a major part of the tree off. If the tree's in extreme vigor, it can also work to just do part of the tree, but we prefer to do the all or nothing method, and that's cut the whole thing down and graft into either rind graft into very big wood, or save small branches low down in the tree that we could cleft graft into. And that's sometimes, it's a hard approach. Sometimes it doesn't work the first time. And if that's the case, if the grafts die, we allow sprouts to come up, and those young, pliable green sprouts they're super easy to graft. They're undifferentiated meristem. They graft, a cleft graft is super easy, super willingly. And so we have 2 shots at it, really. So I guess now we'll just start cutting this thing back. And okay, so my tool of choice for cutting down an avocado tree like this is a Sawzall with a branch cutting blade. This is a really coarse serration that it works really fast. It's a narrow blade. It gets in much tighter angles and places than a chainsaw would. It doesn't work on a great big tree, but on a medium-sized tree, it's really fast and really easy and light, and so I like it. so I've got a bag of cyan wood here, but this is all prepared and ready. I want to show you how we got to that point. And so here's a rough piece of nice cyan wood, but before it's been processed down. And some things to note about it is you can see the tip, it's already starting to grow. It's pushed these buds. These buds following it down below in the branch are also protruding in a nice way. So when I prep cyan wood, I break the stems. A lot of people clip this, clip the petioles. They think, oh, this is less invasive or something, and it's going to save moisture. It's not true. You cut it off like this. You got the same size wound. It's much easier. The actual stubs of the petioles get in the way of the parafilm, and they can actually puncture the parafilm. And it's just a pain to deal with. Snipped. Okay, here, and there's some other features about this sandwich. Here's what we call a knuckle. This is I guess it's a 1.5-year-old or whatever. It's this last flush, and it's just beautiful series of buds, and all of these have a capacity to pop when you graft them. This is almost the preferred piece of cyan wood in this, especially when I'm doing large rind grafts on big diameter wood. I want big pieces of avocado wood, because the bigger the stick, the more moisture it can hold, the more carbohydrates it holds, and the more it will grow. So I've got these things here, these little prongs are also popping. They have nice buds at the end, but they kind of get in the way of your seal. So I just break them off and say goodbye. This piece of wood, I'm going to divide up. That's a nice stick right there with the knuckle, perfect. This piece here has some very nice buds in it. I would probably cut it right there. Maybe that top bud, I don't want that at all. But these buds are pretty nice, and so that's a pretty good smaller stick that you could do a little cleft graft with. Okay, so here's my cyan wood, and it's Avocado cyan wood. And this cyan wood comes to us thanks to Marta Matvienko in Davis, who's got the website Really Good Plants. And she has a lot of really interesting things on her website, and she has a lot of on-the-ground knowledge. She's grown everything, and we're great fans. So she sent us this, and we're thankful for that. This is Araveta, and it's an amazing avocado variety. It's native. It's a found tree from Araveta Canyon in Arizona, and it's extremely cold hardy, hot hardy, tough. So it's great for the Central Valley. It's great for growing in the far north, maybe Oregon, Washington coast, the Channel Islands off Vancouver Island. It's all possible. So this is a season extender and a geographical extender for the avocado, and we are very interested. And the fruit's actually pretty good. That's the important thing. There's some really cold hardy avocados that have really crappy fruit, and this is pretty good. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start processing this cyan wood to put it onto this tree. And the first thing we do is wrap it. So I guess I'm going live here. I'm just going to wrap it. I'm going to cut myself little strips of parafilm. This is actual parafilm. It's not some Chinese imitation. It does this. If your parafilm doesn't stretch like this, then it's not parafilm. Don't use it for avocados. It's harder to use. So I stretch it double widthwise, double lengthwise. So I'm going to do that again. I did that fast. I'm going to do it again. I start stretching it double, and then stretching it double, and I try not to break it, but it doesn't always succeed. So this makes it really thin, and the buds are able to pop through once wrapped up. So here's my stick. I want to make sure my cyan wood is dry. If you keep it in a bag in the refrigerator, sometimes it comes out damp. If you wrap damp wood, you have a good possibility of that dampness causing rot. So I always make sure my sign wood's dry. And I overlap these wraps. If I've got things jutting out, I cut them off because it makes it more likely they can pierce through the parafilm and cause a leak, a moisture leak. And the parafilm really is because this is not dormant wood, it's fully transmissible. Water flows through it, out of it really easily, and so we're in a race to kind of get the graft to heal up and establish circulation before the scion dries out. And once the scion dries out, it's dead. So parafilm is really like a mini greenhouse or a wax seal around the whole thing, and it gives it a fighting chance. So that's one prepared stick. So here I am, I've got a couple surfaces to graft. I've gooped these things with Doc Farwell's solution. Not very pretty, but pretty much most of it. This one's the especially crucial one because it's a very big face, and I need to have something that the tape will adhere to, so I've gooped that up, and so I don't want to work with that quite yet. I'm going to work with these other surfaces that are dry and clean and not gooped. So here I've got, this was laying on the ground. I've taken this thing and bent it upright, and in that upright position it's got a little bit of apical dominance. It wouldn't be bad if this was the graft that took. I'm going to break that off to a nice clean cut, and I will start grafting. I'm going to put this little scion on there, and I'm going to use, it's a reasonable surface to put a cleft graft onto. So here we go. I'm going to lay my knife on that thing, pull my knife upward through that stalk, make a long cut. Whoops, that was kind of a bad cut, but I can recut it. Not too terrible, not exemplary, but you know, that's pretty good. Straight, pretty long. Split this down. Can't see. Oh, my hands are in the way. There we go. I've got a cleft opened. I'm going to lay this thing in there so that I broke the cleft as I stuffed it in there, but I think I can save it. It actually is partially broken and partially not. It's a little bit askew. The lineup is the tail end of the wedge is inserted down into the cleft. The top end is popping out a little bit proud. So I know I've got cambium interface in this section in here. So that's good enough. First thing I'd like to do is wrap it in parafilm, and that is good and waterproof. This I'm not stretching it out in advance because I don't have buds that I have to protect. We stretch it out in advance before putting on our sign wood because we don't want to do this to it and risk breaking our delicate, already advancing buds off of that sign wood. They're very valuable. This doesn't matter too much. We're just not so much tensioning in it, although it does tension the graft a little bit closed. I'm more just expediency. It's really fast just to put it on there. Now I'll take my masking tape. You could use rubber bands in this situation. I like masking tape, it's faster. And I tension as I go around. I'm tensioning on the top and relaxing it around the bottom. Loose around the bottom, loose around the back side, tight around the front. I even grip it with my hand as I go around so that I get extra tension. So that's cinched in pretty good. I got good contact. Better contact means better chance of healing together. So I'll go up over the shoulder a little bit, and I even wrap it up over onto my parafilm a little bit. I don't want water dripping down the scion and getting into a little cup of masking tape in here. It'll promote rot around the base of that stalk. So I put a couple more grafts on. I've done, I think I did this one, I've got that one, this one. And so those were all cleft grafts. Right now we're going to switch to a different type, and this is appropriate for bigger diameter wood. It's possible to do it on something as small as 3/4 of an inch, but then it gets to be like the only way you can graft a 4-inch diameter stick. So here we go. There's a lot of ways to do this, but this is one way I've found really effective and easy. So I just make a wedge, a lot like a cleft graft. I give a back bevel. And I'll take my stock and I'll stick the knife in, cut down in completely through it, and I'll put the skinny side in, the bark side out, so that as I push it down, I've got bark to bark to bark, and I have cambial connection all along that cut. Everywhere that cut touches the wood on both sides, it's got potential healing capacity. And in order to secure that, I just do this. This is where I like the Farwells. When it's dry, it sticks to it pretty nicely. We're hurrying this a little bit, so it's slightly wet, but so I back that up, I support that bark a little bit, and then I push this scion farther down, all the way down in there. And that's pretty good. Now you can see I've got disrupted bark. I've got a big air gap here. I've got, it's wide open there. Seal over it. You got to seal over all that stuff. This is a good place to put like grafting wax. You can stuff a chunk of grafting wax down in there, but if you seal it up well, you don't need to do that. But anyone ever wondered what you could do with traditional grafting wax? That's one thing. There's probably other things to do with that, but I can't talk about them on the air. Let's see, what's the bird we're hearing now? We heard red-shouldered hawk. We've got chickadees. We've got fledging swallows. Woodpeckers a second ago. I think crows. Making a mess of this. So there's one. This is a big piece. I'm going to put another one on the top. So this is secured. It's not going to dry out. I'm going to cover that big hole, and then I'll let that set for a second. We'll do another big chunk of wood. Okay, so now I'm going to prepare the next rind graft. I'm going to put a second scion in the top here. So I make a big long cut on this thing. It's a big thick stick, and that's a nice piece of scion wood. That's what you want. You don't want a thin little spindly thing, because if it's a skinny scion, you have a hard time pushing it down into that bark, that thick bark. Looked pretty bad for a while, but that actually ended up being a pretty nice cut. It's going to go in like that, or is it going to go in like that? Another thing you can do, this is really big wood, you cut through it halfway, slice back up, and notice my thumbs are holding against one another so the knife can't slip and slice my hand open. So I'm narrowing that scion, so when I stick it in there, it doesn't displace the bark quite as much. Now I'm going to split the bark. I'll let you see again how I do that. I just basically stick the knife in all the way down. You can feel it. The outside, the bark is soft, the wood's hard, it stops at the wood. Now you just give it a twist, and it peels it up. And I can stick my scion down in there. And I want to match my angle. Stick that all the way down. I'm going to go partway down there. I'm going to wrap it, support it, and push it all the way down so I get natural tension on it. It's easier to do that than to actually cinch it around enough to get the kind of tension that this develops. Here we go. This is supported. The bark's not going to split anymore because it's got the taping back of it now. I can push that all the way down, and the shoulder, you can see that shoulder just overlaps onto the wood itself and sets. It seats in a fixed position, and it's skinnier and it doesn't. You get the advantage of the very thick scion without all the displacement of the bark and the big hole.
I'm gonna go.
Okay, so what you can see is I've got ridiculous overkill. There's a lot of grafts. There's 7 grafts. I only need 1 to go. 1 graft popping and healing successfully produce an 8-foot tree a year from now. So that's really all I want, but hedging my bets. And if they all go, if all of them go, I'll probably chop this one off, this one off, just take those 2 and have those pop up, so I have less of a brush pile to sort out. And then my wife's always after me not to get rid of junk, but you know, it's nice to have a little bit of junk around, because look at that. You can set up a little shade. If these avocados, you know, with the parafilm wrapped around this green wood, they collect heat. That heat stays in there. It actually will cook the scions, so they're really susceptible. They can't be exposed to any direct sunlight. So you put a cover like that, and then clip this thing on in a couple places. Make sure it stays on there. If the wind blows, put it back. When the sun sets, make sure it's covered. So the final crucial factor in avocado grafting is the sprouting. This tree has a big root system. It's not going to take this standing still. It's going to send up lots of little sprouts. It's going to initiate dormant lenticels here. They're going to pop. They're going to look like little green potato, or pink potato sprouts. You're going to have to watch this process. Within 10 days, you'll start seeing sprouting occurring. If the sprouts get more than an inch long, that tree will start shunting its energy away from the grafts and sealing them off. If it gets 4 inches, 5 inches long, all the grafts will fail. So you just have to be vigilant, and like after 10 days, it's almost every every other day, every 3 days, you have to go out and look. And so often the grafts will be at the base of branches, at the knuckles. It'll be around. I don't know how many little avocado seeds pierced with toothpicks, suspended above water glasses, were sprouted in windowsills from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, planted out in the yard, are now big trees that aren't producing fruit. Some are producing fruit, some are not. There's a lot of avocados that were planted, like if you planted a Surprise, if you planted a Stewart, if you planted a Little Cado, if you planted a Holiday, if you have a Fuerte, those are all avocados that won't produce fruit or effective fruit in your Northern California backyard. So those are avocados that are candidates for being chopped down, regrafted to something really good. There's no sense in living with a miserable avocado. So here's how to do it. This is 3 weeks later. We've got the tree waiting to start growing, and there's a little bit of action that we can show you on these grafts. So, little bit of buds popping through the parafilm there. We're not doing anything. We're not picking the parafilm away or anything. But, down here, for instance, this bud, my thumb is protruding fully. It seems like every one of the grafts is growing. And that's it. Yeah, seems like we're starting to get sprouts on the stalk that we're pulling off. So now we have a case where there's a graft that we did a month ago, and it took off really well, but we're starting to see some things. And one of them is suckers. We've been pulling a couple off, but here's Here's the stage of sucker. It's tiny, it's a little teeny bud. It doesn't look green, it's pink. And that's when they're really effective to rub off with your fingernail. You just get rid of them and it's gone. And if you let it get 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch long, it'll start sucking away at the graft. And you can see that the rubber band is already oxidized. It's broken off, and this is in the process of sloughing off. The parafilm is going away. So this graft is going.